Hey, everybody, I'm Laurie Ruettimann, and welcome to the Rise of HXM, Human Experience Management. As always, I'm here with my co-hosts, Lars Schmidt and Minda Harts, and we have a special guest today, Joey Price. Joey, how you doing?
Hey, Laurie. Hey, Lars. Hey, Minda. It's great to be here. I'm doing well.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, listen, you're coming at us live from Baltimore. Why don't you tell the world really quickly who Joey Price is?
Well, that's a big question, but the short answer, I'm the CEO of Jumpstart HR. We provide HR for small businesses and startups across the U.S. Proud father and husband, and moved into a new house recently. So a lot
Love
of
it.
good things happening.
I'm waiting for the photos behind you. You need some pictures up on the wall.
I know, right? Right. I'm just gonna copy exactly your setup, and
Oh, there,
imitation is the sincerest
there.
form of flattery.
Well, we're here today to talk about upskilling and reskilling and really creating a culture of learning. And so before we get to upskilling and reskilling, we need to talk about how companies can put together a culture where that actually can happen. So talk to me about what makes for a strong culture of learning.
Well, Laurie, what makes a strong culture of learning is the same thing that makes a strong culture for anything else. What gets rewarded, what gets promoted, and what gets incentivized. And so, if you want to create a culture where you've got aggressive learners who want to take advantage of learning new skills or maybe even transitioning to other areas of the job, promote it, reward it, incentivize it, make it a part of the DNA of your organization. And that's what's going to not only inspire your current workforce to adopt a greater attraction for learning, but you're going to bring the more people into your organization that are going to want to upskill and learn and grow.
Well, Joey, this is why we're friends because you've got a common sense answer for everything. I love it. Thank you so much. I want to go to Minda right now because Minda, I think upskilling and reskilling are more important than ever before, but I may be wrong. I've been wrong before. So tell me what you think about that.
So I'm going to try to be like Joey and give a common sense answer myself. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. For me, I do think that upskilling and reskilling is really important more than ever because companies right now get the opportunity to be proactive versus reactive. And I think many companies miss the mark when they're reactive. I think there's plenty of companies who digitally, they missed the mark because they started too slow to upskill their employees. And so I think I read something recently that said that over 1 billion jobs will be reconfigured by 2030. And so we really need to start now to make sure that we're providing our employees with the skills they need to meet that demand.
Really good stuff. Lars, what do you think about this? I think the words upskilling and reskilling are thrown around a lot. So tell me what you hear when you talk to progressive CHROs.
Yeah, they are. And I think, I'll echo what Minda said. I think a lot of companies, the majority of the field still tends to be more reactive than proactive in this space. And I think if you look at the progressive side, they've been able to make some pretty massive adjustments to all things COVID. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And there's been, I've seen several case studies of companies that basically redeployed their staff into different areas of the business at scale because their original roles weren't really being utilized in this kind of work from home, remote work structure. So companies that really get that and they get the upskilling and the reskilling and they can actually make those adjustments are ones that are coming out ahead right now, especially.
That's really good. Well, Joey, as we think about like the forward thinking progressive organizations out there, and actually just the mom and pop organizations, technology has a role to play when it comes to developing the future workforce. So talk to me about some of the best practices you're seeing as it relates to technology with upskilling and reskilling.
Sure. Well, I love what Lars said about being a proactive employer and putting this at the forefront of your mind when it comes to having the workforce that you really need in your organization. And without speaking to one particular tool, I would ask you as an audience participant to think about the life cycle of training and the way that technology can add value to your training and upskilling efforts. So on the forefront, you want to identify a training tool. You also want to think about ways to track training and learn and have your measurement against the training outcomes. You also want to think about how are you going to apply what you've learned into your workforce. So for example, if you are utilizing a technology, how are you going to put this as a part of performance plans or growth plans to make sure that the skills are not just learned in a workshop or learned in a weekend, but actually continually thought about and influenced in the organization. And then last but certainly not least, you want to think about the fact that not everyone comes to your organization with the same background, with the same experiences, and with the same abilities. And so when you think about any vendor that you select for your technology, you want to make sure that it's accountable to that.
Really good. You know, Minda, we're in the age of HXM, right? That's what this is all about. That's why we're here. And when I think about HXM and I think about upskilling and reskilling, I mean, technology is a natural component of this. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important to use tools and technology because the main thing is, a lot of companies, they can't protect the jobs, but they can protect the people. And I think that's where we're headed. Things may change. All of us, our job function may change, but are our companies invested in our success? And I think that's the most important key here. And then the other thing that I would say, in order to do that, you can use HXM to scale faster, right? We can train so many more people if we have the right technology.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Lars, years ago, you and I had a web show, but you also had a web show with someone else that was called Cool Tools. And I always think about that when I think of you and technology, because you see so much tech in the marketplace. So, while being vendor agnostic, can you talk a little bit about the landscape of technology as it relates to upskilling and reskilling and learning? What are you seeing? What do you like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think of all the things we've covered on the show, this topic is ripe for disruption with HXM. And there's so many ways to do it, whether it is, automated nudges around certain training that you might need at certain times in the employee life cycle. You just got promoted to a manager. Great. We're going to send you automatically some resources to actually help you facilitate great one-on-ones with your staff, coaching and developing your team. The way that we can kind of leverage nudges and automation, particularly now, is huge. And I think another piece, when you look at learning as a whole right now, Josh Bersin coined the term learning the flow of work. And that's what learning is about right now. It's not about classroom learning. It's about in the moment, snackable, bite-sized, kind of on-demand pieces of content that technology is fantastic at being able to house and make it super easy for your employees to actually find what they need, when they need it, get the access and be able to do the work they need to do. So this field is just, there's so many different platforms and resources out there on the HXM side to really support building a best in breed cutting edge practice around learning agility and learning velocity and upskilling and reskilling and all the things we're talking about right now.
Yeah, good stuff. I can see why that Cool Tools show took off. I'm just kidding. Joey, as I think about the world of learning, I mean, everything's been disrupted by COVID. But when we were talking about learning and upskilling and reskilling before COVID, it almost seemed like we were talking about this data-driven discussion. Everybody had iPads and mobile devices. And now when I think about learning and COVID, I think about teaching people to have empathy and compassion. So you tell me, what's the impact of COVID on this whole discussion?
Well, the impact of COVID on this discussion is very huge. It's accelerated a lot of the future of work. We're actually living in the midst of that. And as was stated earlier, we're all just trying to figure this out. We're all trying to figure out how to relate to our workforce. We're all trying to figure out what roles and responsibilities exist today that may or may not exist in the future. And so that's really the main thing, is that COVID has caused us to not only stand in the moment and reflect, but we have to be fast and quick and agile to adapt, because we can't just sit in the moment. We have to respond to it.
Yeah. Minda, I see you shaking your head. I think when we talk about COVID now, we're talking about every crazy thing that has happened in 2020. Like COVID is the word, and it no longer means the coronavirus. It means everything else, all the disruptions. So talk to me about 2020 and just the impact it's having on the landscape of learning.
Yeah, I think that I don't know about you all, but this has been in my 15-year career, I have never been asked so often, how am I doing, right? What's working, what isn't working?
Yeah.
And I think, back to the continuous feedback, like I had never been in a situation where people, I don't know if it's performative or if it's sincere, but they're asking how you're doing, right? You're asking what's working. And I think that that's a unique thing that has presented us in 2020, the empathy piece. We're really leaning into that more and more. And I think that this is a really great time for people to ask, managers to ask their employees, what does good look like? What can we do to make the work experience better? And I think HXM really helps with that because, as Lars said, those nudges, maybe you don't have the innate emotional intelligence, but you're more digital intelligence, right? And so being able to balance the two, and I'm really excited about the future of work, even though we are currently in it, as Joey said. But I think that this idea of understanding each other's experiences and what's going on and how we can make it better, I think that's part of the new industrial revolution. And so we're a part of that. And it's the decisions that we make right now that will dictate, what upskilling and reskilling really look like.
Lars, I just had a thought when Minda was talking. She brought up the idea that you discussed as well, nudges and little ways to encourage our managers to reach out. And Minda, you use the word performative. And I worry that a lot of this technology just enables surface level communication. So what's the risk and what's the benefit with HXM? I mean, we really want people, if we're a good progressive organization, to learn and grow and marry their passion and purpose. But I wonder if technology just kind of can check the boxes for us and still enable some other behaviors on the side. I don't know, Lars, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly enables other behaviors on the side. So I mean,
Yeah.
that technology doesn't solve for that. And I think, my view on technology, and me, I'm a tech geek and I love HXM. I love all things technology. Technology is a tool. It supports behavior, it supports practices, it supports intent, but it doesn't replace those things. And so I think if you look at things like, nudges in and of themselves are good, they're helpful, but if you don't also kind of give some guidance beyond, like, so what happens if you have a nudge and you say, it's a nudge to just say like, hey, how are you doing today?
Yeah.
And you get a response, I'm doing really badly. I'm
Right.
struggling today. This happened to me. That happened to me. And if that was an automated, prompt and you're getting a deep emotional response, and as a manager, you're unequipped to handle that, that's a problem, right? So I think you have to look at the finding ways to actually support managers and employees beyond just the kind of rote nature of technology as a pure prompt, and actually the human thing that goes behind that, the human thing that's coupled with that. And so I think it's important that you can't have technology without that, or you're going to find yourselves in situations that could actually end up being worse than if you wouldn't have made the prompt to begin with.
Really good point. Joey, there's another conversation that everybody likes to have, which is around all the different generations in the workplace. And that can either be a really interesting conversation or really boring and overdone. So I want to have an interesting conversation about it. And certainly there is something to be said about different generations and their different needs when it comes to skilling, reskilling, upskilling, learning. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, to make a routine conversation a bit more interesting, I would want you to think about the fact that previously we used to put employees through funnels, but with there being 5 generations in the workforce now, and possibly even 6, because even a 6-year-old with an iPad can start a business, we have to think about a more bespoke approach to our talent operations and our training and learning. We have to think about what are the motivations for individuals who want to train? What's going to incentivize them to perform well? And why are they doing it? And so we have to understand it's not one funnel that we herd everyone through and try to get some intended result. We actually have to step back for a second and say, well, why does Johnny in accounting need to learn this new skill? Or what would motivate Sarah in finance to take on this task? And the more intentional we are with treating this as a more bespoke opportunity, we'll see some valuable returns from our efforts.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. Minda, I like that point. Joey's really talking about really prescriptive career pathing, which I absolutely love, which means you have to get to know the human being and you really have to marry the technology you have with the person, with the DNA that sits in front of you. So talk to me a little bit about that, about generations, about looking at the human, and about career pathing.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to managers asking what the employee needs. So if you have someone who's over 40 and you have somebody who's 27, their needs in the workplace may be a little bit different, but both of them at the end of the day are going to need digital intelligence and emotional intelligence. So how can we pair the two? And I've seen some companies who've done really well with this, who have similar to apprenticeship programs in which they pair the certain generations together so that they both can leverage, because technology can be interchangeable, but people's unique skill sets, you can't replace that, right? And so being able to really hone in and ask, how can we provide you with the tools so that you can do the best work of your career? And I think those are the questions that we may not be asking our employees.
I think that's a good point. I work with a 25-year-old and I learn all kinds of random stuff all day long. So I have to say that's true. Lars, what are your thoughts about generations, career pathing? Wrap this all up for us with a bow.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the, generational needs, can be distinct, and other times they cannot be. I think in HR, we get, we're lazy sometimes, and we like to apply generational stereotypes and expectations around like everybody, millennials, like tired of reading about millennials, now Gen Z, and how that's different from we're Gen X, like we're, we could adapt up and down the generational scale. And I think we have to start not necessarily bucketing people with kind of set expectations. There's certainly, I think from a life stage standpoint, obviously there's nuance there. So whether it relates to support around, early stage career development, whether it's around fertility benefits, if we're looking at how we're supporting these employees, or mental health benefits or elder care benefits. Like I think companies are starting to think much more broadly around how they actually support their employees. And I think to me, it's like the different needs may differ more based on where you are in your career than necessarily kind of what generation you belong to.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Well, Joey, as we start to really wrap up this conversation around, people learning, reskilling, upskilling, I wonder what the opportunity is out there right now for organizations who really either want to do it right or amplify their efforts. What do you think the opportunity looks like?
Well, I think that COVID has presented, I won't say a blank slate, but a clean pivot, a clean opportunity to pivot into being the organization that you've always wished you could have been, and the organization that your employees wish that they worked for. Because we're having this retrenching around empathy, this retrenching around technology, this retrenching around what does it mean to truly work in the current state of our climate right now. And so the opportunities out there, without sounding too optimistic and rosy, the world really is your oyster, but you do have to put in the work to attain the goals that you want to have. And you have to have honest conversations, not just with leadership, but with your employees from the top to the bottom, about what that's going to take to be the employer that you really want to be.
Good stuff. Minda, tell us what you think the opportunity is, especially the opportunity we have just right now, married with the potential of HXM.
Yeah, I think that we have the potential to build more agility. We have the potential to build adaptability, and most importantly, reskilling our workforce to meet the future demands. And if we start right now and we change the narrative around it, like reskilling doesn't have to be calamity, right? It doesn't have to be fear mongering. Like we get a chance to partner with our talent and find out what they need so that they can be successful, as well as what the company needs. And I think if we change the conversation to what opportunities do we have, not, are we eliminating the workforce? No, again, jobs might change, but if we're centering our people, then we'll make sure that they're equipped for the next generation.
Really good. I like that idea of centering the discussion around talent. Lars, take us home with this question. Minda said the future of work is here, right? We're here. So we've talked a little bit about what are the opportunities if we get it right, but what does the future of work look like to you? And what if we get it wrong?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that to me, the single most important skill that we can have in our employees right now is growth mindset. Right? The ability to have a true appetite and interest in learning and growing and scaling, because nothing is going to be static anymore. Very few jobs are going to be static. Very few, conditions externally are going to be static. We are going to be in volatile times for a while. And so I think that from an employee perspective, from a company perspective, and from a HXM standpoint, the more we can embed and encourage and support learning within our own organizations, the more we're going to, we're going to win as employers, we're going to win as HR departments, and we're certainly going to win as employees, because we're going to be able to be much more adaptable in terms of where we can add value to the company and the business, and ultimately, our own individualistic career paths and aspirations. The easier it is for us to absorb new skills, new thinking, new perspectives, the more effective we're going to be and the more opportunities we're going to have. So I think that to me, it's all about learning. This is a topic I get incredibly excited about.
Well, I hear it. I hear it from all of you. Thank you so much today for participating in this discussion. Joey Price, always good to see you, my friend.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Minda, it was always great to catch up with you.
See you next time.
Yeah, and Lars, come on, buddy. It's nice to see you.
Always, Laurie, always.
Yeah, my friend. Well, everybody, listen, we love talking to you about all things HXM. We do it every week. We're so glad you're here. And SAP had this discussion on a master scale at an event called Success Connect. And you could see replays from that event in the Americas, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, all of it on a link that will be included below. So Success Connect is where to find more of this discussion. And I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next week on the Rise of HXM. Bye.